So now walk everybody through exactly what Chevron did to come after you. And also, are they going after other lawyers who were on the case as well?
They have gone after other lawyers, but they directed most of their fire against me personally. There's a couple reasons for that. One is they found a very friendly judge here in New York where I lived who is essentially facilitating what I think is this abusive demonization campaign targeting me. And the other reason is I did play an instrumental role for many years in organizing the case, securing financing for legal expenses, speaking to the media, and I was just very visible. And I think Chevron wanted to, again, bring me down and cancel me out of the legal profession. So, the first thing they did is they came to New York, in the very court, by the way, where we had initially filed the lawsuit, and where they said, no, we can't do the case there, the underlying environmental case. We want it in Ecuador, and we accept jurisdiction there. So, once they started to lose down in Ecuador, they came back to the court that was never good enough for them to sue me under the racketeering statute, a civil case. They first tried to get the Southern District of New York to prosecute me criminally. The SDNY refused. The case was bogus from the get-go for various reasons. They paid a witness that they found in Ecuador, a man named Alberto Guerra, $2 million, moved his whole family to the United States, coached him for 53 days, and he came into court before Judge Kaplan without a jury and claimed that he was in a meeting where I supposedly approved of a bribe of the trial judge in Ecuador, which is completely false. There's no evidence that happened. It did not happen, other than the words out of his mouth, which Judge Kaplan, who's a former tobacco industry defense lawyer, credited over my good word as a lawyer that's never had a single ethical complaint filed by a client in 28 years of practice. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And I realized then that the fix was in. Like, without a jury, with a judge totally against me, with Chevron paying a witness to lie about me, they were going to really use this case to try to bring me down. And they did. I couldn't testify on my own behalf. Kaplan threatened me with jail if I even mentioned the word pollution. He wouldn't allow any evidence related to Chevron's contamination in Ecuador. The whole basis of the verdict against them in Ecuador was this scientific evidence that had come out of those judicial inspections during this 8-year trial. He wouldn't let that into evidence. He wouldn't let me put into evidence these counterclaims I had against Chevron that showed they had committed all sorts of crimes down in Ecuador to try to obstruct the case. So this was a rigged trial. It ended with Kaplan determining that I had committed fraud in Ecuador. Chevron had dropped all money damages claims. By the way, they had sued me for $60 billion, and I'm a human rights lawyer working out of a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. I mean, I can't even explain what that means. They dropped all those money damages to avoid a jury because under the Constitution, in a civil case, you only get a jury if you're sued for money. So it was all kind of fixed, and Judge Kaplan ruled against me. He then imposed, after the trial, again with no jury, literally millions and millions of dollars of fines on me in order for me to repay Chevron millions of dollars of their legal fees, knowing I didn't have the money. It bankrupted me. Chevron ended up taking my life savings. Kaplan then went to the Manhattan Bar Grievance Committee, which regulates law licenses, and said, you really need to disbar this guy. And they did, without even giving me a hearing where I could challenge his false findings of fact, which, by the way, have been contradicted by 28 appellate judges on 6 appellate courts in Ecuador and Canada, including the Supreme Courts of both countries. So this was all a manipulation of the legal system to bring down one of the lawyers who played an instrumental role in holding Chevron accountable. Now, I'll say this, it hasn't worked. I mean, I know I'm in a hyper-complicated situation. I've been locked up in my home now for over 2 years, and I'll explain that in a second. But there's a lot of other lawyers working on this case in other jurisdictions preparing to enforce the judgment against Chevron. They are facing enormous financial risk, enormous reputational risk. Word is spreading around the world that they cannot be trusted to comply with the law in communities where they operate. And it's getting increasingly hard for Chevron to maintain a competitive position vis-a-vis its peers in the oil industry as it, searches the world for more and more supply, which, by the way, shouldn't be happening anyway because of global warming. But this case has put a real burden on Chevron in a way that other big oil companies simply don't have. So it has been successful, and we are still, or I should say the Ecuadorian communities are still planning on enforcing their judgment regardless of what happens to me personally.